Those of you that can, I'll be seated. If you look to the sky, you'll see the Sky Troopers. Our singer today is Haley Schuster. She's going to be singing God Bless the USA.
The flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. Of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time to stand and say where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. To be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mayor Michelle Collins. It truly is an honor to be standing in front of you today. I do want to take a moment to recognize my backup team here, Councilwoman Sarah Thacker, Councilman Ryan Colvin, and Vice Mayor Jeff Nestor. Again, good afternoon. I would like to personally thank each and every person that has given up their time today to be here. Honoring Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy. Today is finally his day in Miamisburg, Ohio. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be the mayor and give the opening remarks for this event. Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy was a helicopter crew chief and gunner with the 1st Cavalry Division of the Army during the Vietnam War. On May the 6th, 1970, at the age of 19, he made the ultimate sacrifice for the love of his country, for each and every American, and most notably for his fellow servicemen that he calls friends. Specialist 4, James Skaggs, will tell you about Gary's heroic efforts that encompass the safety of everyone around him with no regard for his own life. This defines a hero. This park is full of heroes and heroines. And if you have served, you are a hero to this community and to your country. The McKiddy family are heroes. They have led the charge for 50 years to ensure that their brother's story is heard, remembered, and recognized. Thank you for letting me be a part of this, and to everyone here to share in the pride and the love that you have for your brother. Please enjoy your day here in Miamisburg. God bless Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy, the McKiddy family, the Zanawick family that are here with us, another Gold Star family that we honor here in Miamisburg. God bless this community, and God bless America. Thank you. Mr. Skaggs, I'd be honored if you would join me at the podium here. On behalf of the City of Miamisburg, everyone sitting here in Miamisburg City Council, I would like to read you this proclamation. It is presented to James R. Skaggs. The mayor and the City Council join together in recognition of your service to our country and your continued dedication to sharing the heroism of the late Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy, a native of Miamisburg. It was witnessed today by my hand on this day. We appreciate you.
So
God love you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to take a few moments and acknowledge a lot of people, actually. I'm so proud of the Boy Scouts. Guys, thank you all so much. Thank you. I know you're patriots, and make your life count for something. Make it count for good. And I'd like to say thank you to the Patriot Riders. Didn't get a chance to visit with you guys. Didn't get a chance to visit with much of the Cav guys here, and I want to acknowledge all of you. Would you all just stand and folks applaud these heroes, all of our veterans. Any veterans in the house today, in the area, these are American heroes, folks. Thank you all so much. You may be seated. I want to say thank you also. I want to acknowledge my wife, Deborah. Would you stand? This is my wife, Deborah. And my oldest daughter, Tyann. And Crystal, where are you? Way back here with the camera in the yellow shirt there, and she's taken a lot of pictures. So they traveled with me from Troy, Illinois, which is just outside of St. Louis. I've been making that trek for a long time, and it's my honor to do so. But thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it so much. All of our people that are patriots and love this nation and what independence and freedom stands for. There's a high price to pay for freedom. I tell friends this all the time, that freedom is hard to win and easy to lose. And we need to continue to fight for freedom and independence in this nation. So I thank you all for that. I'm going to share this story with you. It's an old story, but it's timeless. I've done this many, many times, but every time I do it, I'll tell you folks, it's an emotional thing for me. And I have to pour my heart out before you when I do this. And so it's not easy. I never know exactly how I'm going to respond. Sometimes I cry my way through it. Sometimes it's like it doesn't bother me at all. So I don't know. But I will tell you this, that I was honored to serve with the 1st Cavalry Division, 1st of the 9th, Troop C in 1969 and 70. And I just found out several years ago that my father, I knew my dad was in the Army, and I knew he was in the infantry in World War II, and that he trudged his way across Europe. but I had no idea that he landed at Normandy on D-Day. Never told me. But you see, that's the way the old soldiers were. To them, it was just going out day to day and getting the job done. To them at that time, I don't think they realized the significance of the event that they were involved in. I know that Gary and I and all the young troopers we were with, we didn't really realize the significance of that war and what we were involved in. And so I found over a period of time that it was better for me to share it with people rather than hold it in. It was kind of therapeutic for me to do that. And so I began doing that, began sharing it. And I found not only it helped me, but it helped other people as well, especially veterans, those who are struggling with PTSD and other injuries. So I'm going to share this story with you. It's not really my story, but I always like to title it like this. This is the story of a courageous young man and God's amazing grace. I've shared this story at Fort Hood. I shared it here at Miamisburg at the Traveling Wall a number of years ago. I've been on radio, I've been on Fox News, I've been on Dayton News, and I've been all over the country literally sharing this story with people, with VFWs, American Legions, churches, whoever will listen to me, trying to get Gary Lee McKiddy the honor that he deserves. And so that's why we're gathered here today. I joined the Army in 1969. And I joined because I didn't want to get drafted and end up in Vietnam. That plan did not work so well. 7 months after basic training in AIT, I ended up in Vietnam, separated from my group as air traffic controllers, separated from that group and taken out and put in this combat unit called 1st of the 9th, 1st Cavalry Division. My head was swimming. I'm thinking, this doesn't make a bit of sense. But due to the needs of the Army, I was placed into an operations center where they needed what was called an RTO and working in there with the flight crews. I'd been in Vietnam for 2 months, and I was sitting on my bunk one day playing a guitar, and in walks this handsome, smiling young fella, throws his hand out and says, "Hey, my name's Gary McKiddy, I play the guitar too." We got to be best friends. And we began playing music together, and I couldn't sing anything like Gary could. Man, what a singer the guy was. He was a great voice, and he had one of those dynamic, outgoing, charismatic personalities that everybody liked. Yes, even the top brass liked Gary McKiddy. He was just that way. And people liked being around him, and I began on my days off from the operations center, I began flying as what was called the observer. Now they call it co-pilot, but I was really the observer. I was a specialist 4, and I was placed in the left front seat. And the reason they put an enlisted man in there, they would not risk putting 2 pilots in the Loach helicopters because they were flying at treetop level and they got shot down so much. They didn't want to put 2 pilots up there. So they took me or another observer and they trained us how to fly that helicopter from point A to point B. I couldn't hover. I couldn't take off, but I could fly the thing, and I could slide into home if I had to, and that was the plan. If something happens to the pilot, I'm going to get us home. And so that's why they considered me the co-pilot. Gary was originally signed as a clerk in the CO's office, and he didn't want to do that. Instead, he started flying, and he really loved it. And so when Gary flew, and I was around, we flew together all the time. Every time Gary went out and I had days off, I flew with Gary. We flew on a lot of dangerous missions. And then we flew a lot of routine missions up and down the highway, covering convoys and covering areas of suspected enemy activity, but most of the time it was routine. But then there were those days when one of our crews were shot down and we had to cover a hot area while the infantry was inserted, and we had to cover the extractions. Gary was a compassionate young man. One day we both had the same day off, and we wanted to get our boots on the ground in the jungle. We had an infantry unit assigned to us called the Blues, And they were going on a one-day patrol, and we thought, let's just get into the jungle and see what this is like. And so that's what we did. We volunteered for a one-day patrol, and we hacked our way through this jungle and came into a village at the end of the mission. And when we arrived in the mission, at the village, all of these young kids, all these little bitty kids came running towards us. Now me, I was very serious about this whole thing. I'd heard all the stories about kids carrying grenades and charges and things like that, and so I didn't want to take any chances. I locked and loaded. Gary walks into this, there are about 30 of us, and he walks in, lays his weapon down, gets down on his knees, and these kids swarm right over him, laughing, and he's rolling around on the ground, giggling and tickling these kids. And I thought, this is wild. But you see, that's the kind of person he was. He wasn't afraid. He was relaxed. He loved kids. He loved people. And that's the way he was. And I'd so admired that. One day, I was at a landing zone, or we were at a landing zone together called LZ Buttons in Phuc Vinh province, and we were refueling or getting lunch or something. And I saw Gary walking around, and he had a little New Testament Bible he pulled out of his pocket. And he was reading that. And he never said a thing to me about that, but I always thought that was interesting. Well, in May of 1970, President Nixon ordered the troops into Cambodia. There were staging areas all along the Cambodian border, and he had assigned the cavalry, the 1st Cav Division, the responsibility of going in and taking out these staging units. They were supplying supply routes and stockpiles of supplies right across the river, and we weren't supposed to go in there, but we went in. And so on May the 6th, we were scheduled to go in. May the 5th, that evening, I pulled guard duty. I stopped by Gary's bunk. At this point, I was flying scouts full-time. I had started flying scouts full-time in April of 1970. It switched over. So we always flew together. And I checked at his bunk that night. We were going out the next morning, and I wanted to see how he was doing. And I'd never seen Gary like this. We never talked seriously about death or dying. We just accepted it. We even joked about it sometimes. You know, this is my day, or you're going to get it tomorrow, and that kind of thing. That's the way these guys talked. We talked that way to keep us from getting so serious that we couldn't handle it. But that's how we dealt with it. And I went into his hooch that night and checked on him, and he said, I've never seen him like this. He said, I don't feel good about this one, Jim. He said, I want to scratch your name, and I don't want you to go. And I said, Gary, if you're going, I'm going. You see, we had formed a soldier's pact. You never leave your buddies behind. Never. And so, anyway, I started to walk out the door, and then he stops me. He says, Jim, I want to ask one thing of you. He said, if you insist on going with me, he said, I want you to pray with me. I'm going to pray. And he said, I want you to pray with me. And to my regret, to this very day, I will honestly tell you, I said no to my best friend. I said, I won't do that. I wasn't interested. The next morning, we took off before the sun came up, and we arrived on site. We flew across the river, got into Cambodia, just across the river, and the sun was just coming up. And we noticed, as we pulled into this village that we were assigned to check out, that villagers were leaving. The sun was just coming up, and there were people getting out of the village. Now, anytime you roll in and you see villagers getting out, that's not a good sign. And we had flown in as a pair, which was called a hunter-killer team, with a loach, which we were the loach, the low bird, at treetop level. And then we had a Cobra escort up around 500 feet or so, keeping an eye on us. And as we rolled through this village, we'd never seen anything like this. There were large pole barns where supplies were being stored, and there were foxholes, and there were also uniforms hanging out to dry, enemy NVA uniforms. And as we circled around the village, we came over this one hut, an enemy soldier jumped out. Now, in order for us to engage the enemy, if we were not shot at first, we had to get permission to shoot. And Mr. Whidden, our pilot, Warrant Officer 1, Tommy Whidden, he recommended we not shoot him. He was unarmed. So he said, I want to shoot an unarmed guy. So we thought that was a mistake. We circled back around, and when we came back around, this guy was gone. And so we're hovering over this one hut about 50 feet off the ground. And Mr. Whidden, and we carried white phosphorus grenades and hand grenades, fragmentation grenades. And Mr. Whidden says, drop a white phosphorus on that hut, let's see what happens. He dropped the white phosphorus on that hut. It exploded into flames and all hell broke loose. We got shot to pieces. The rounds came in directly behind my head and over the top of Gary's head and hit the transmission, and we were soaked instantly with hot transmission fluid. The inside of the bird was soaked. We couldn't see out the windows. It was so bad. And we called up to the Cobra, we're hit, we're heading south, and we took off. And the Cobra rolled in, and then he caught up with us as we got back across the river, and we asked Mr. Whidden, with our bomb craters were everywhere, can we set this bird down? And he said, no, we're flying it home. All of the lights on the instrument panel were flashing, warning us that things were overheating and it wasn't going to make it very far. We were up about 300 feet off the ground, maybe doing about 100 knots. And I turned to Gary, I looked over my right shoulder, and I turned to Gary and I said, we need to dump all of our frags and our white phosphorus out of here now. And when I turned over my right shoulder and I looked at him, last time I saw him, he had this look in his eyes that burned holes right through me. It's like laser beams. I've never seen anything like it. It's like he knew this was it. He dumped that stuff, and I then, preparing to crash, we had what was called inertia locks for myself and the pilot. We were in these 3-point harnesses that allowed us to move forward and move, even lean out the window of the helicopter, so we had mobility. I hit those inertia locks, and what they do is they lock you back into your seat so that you can't be thrown out upon impact. I hit those. The transmission locked up, the rotor blades slowed down, and we came in hard. When we hit the ground, we landed in a clearing, fortunately, right in front of the jungle. I remember the bird flipped over on its left side. I saw the blades fly off. I saw the dirt go flying by. And then we flipped back upright, and I saw the jungle rushing at me, and I heard the glass in front of me crash, and that's the last thing I remember about the crash. When I came to, I was laying on my back in the jungle, looking up. I saw a few helicopters circling around. And I also saw off to my right side, kind of at an angle, what appeared to be a bonfire. And kind of like bottle rockets, it was ammunition, was cooking off, shooting every which way. I didn't know how badly I was injured. I was in shock, and I got to my feet somehow, and I wanted to make my way over to that helicopter, that bonfire. My legs wouldn't move, and I looked down. My right foot was all twisted around. My right thigh was broken in 2 places. My pelvis was broken in 3 places. And I was covered with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree burns. When I saw that, I collapsed back into the jungle. I came to again, and when I did, there were 2 medical corpsmen on the ground, and at this time there were helicopters everywhere. The medical corpsman was trying to get me onto a stretcher and hoist me out. I grabbed one of them by the wrist, and I said, I got 2 crewmen down here. I said, we can't leave them. You got to find them. He went over to where the fire had burned down, and he came back and he shook his head no. I knew what he meant. They were gone. I began to cry uncontrollably. And as they hoisted me out of that jungle, there were helicopters everywhere. I remember in and out of consciousness just waving at them. But I was so heartbroken, I felt like I had broken the soldier's pact. I had left my guys. I lost them. Took me back to a rear area in a MASH unit and began working on me, and several days in and out of consciousness. They put me into a body cast, worked on my burns. And an investigation team came in one day and asking details about the crash. And they asked me, he said, how did you get out of the helicopter? I said, I don't know. I was unconscious. They said, well, do you think you were thrown? I said, I was not thrown. I was not thrown. I hit that inertia lock. I was locked in tight. There was no way I was coming out of that helicopter. He said, well, we found Gary McKiddy draped over Mr. Whidden, as if he was trying to get him out. We believe what happened was Gary got you out first, went back for the pilot. The live rounds in there, the fuel cells exploded, killed them both. I said, that's what happened. That makes sense. And so they awarded Gary the Silver Star posthumously. It was originally he was put in for the Medal of Honor. General Casey at that time we have records that show that he had recommended him for the Medal of Honor, and also our commanding officer, Major Galen Rocher at that time, had recommended Gary for the Medal of Honor. It was downgraded to the Silver Star. That's the battle that we've been fighting for 52 years. I was discharged 13 months later. I was sent to Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver, Colorado. 13 months later, I was medically discharged as an E5. And the next several years were very, very confusing to me. I married my lovely wife in 1973. In June of 1970, I get a phone call from Mr. McKiddy on the phone. And he asked me a question. He was blubbering so badly he could hardly talk. And through his tears, he asked me, Jim, he said, only one thing I got to know. He said, did my boy get a chance to pray before he died? I said, yes, sir, Mr. McKiddy, he sure did. He sure did. He said, that's all I need to know. Several months later, when I was on convalescent leave, came home to St. Louis, bought a new car, and drove out here so that we could attend a ceremony for Gary to receive the Silver Star posthumously. As I said, I was discharged 13 months later. In 1973, I married. And I was really struggling, folks. Survivor's guilt, PTSD, the whole works. I was angry. I was mad at the world. I didn't understand. Nothing made any sense to me. And I won't go into the details. You all know what happens to people when they're running, when they're scared, when nothing makes any sense, when you're broken and you're beat down. It was a very depressing, negative time for me. In January 1975, I did something that I didn't think I would do. I went to a church service. And at that church service, I committed my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. But let me tell you, thank you so much. Let me tell you that turned my life around. There was a healing that I began to experience as I began to read the Bible. And I began to learn how to pray, and I began to go to church, and I began to worship. I was reading through my Bible one day, and I came across this Bible verse in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 13. Look it up when you get home. Jesus is getting ready to go to the cross, and he says this: greater love has no man than this, that he will lay down his life for his friends. I read that, it hit me right between the eyes. It was so real to me. It had a dual meaning for me. I spoke with Rick over some of the things that I normally don't share when I tell this story, but just some thoughts came to me in the last few days, and I want to share them with you. One thing I want to say is, I never got to say thank you to those medics that pulled me out of that jungle. I don't know if there are any medics here today, but God bless you guys. Down in those, they go into the places where nobody else will go, and they rescue our soldiers. Under fire, under duress, the whole works, and they go in with courage, and they drag people out of hellholes so that their lives can be saved. So thank you to the medics, to the doctors. When I was still wounded and laying in the hospital there in Vietnam, one day a nurse came up to me, and I never got to say thank you to the nurses, the women who served. The nurse came up to me and she uncovered some of my bandages and looked at all my wounds, and she started crying. I thought, is it that bad? And she started crying. So I just want to say thank you to all the nurses and all the medical professionals who work so tirelessly to save our lives. I appreciate that so much. I also want to say thank you so much to all these cavalry crewmen, all those who may have served, whether on a helicopter or a tank or whatever you served in. I want to say thank you all you Cav soldiers. You're the best. You guys are the best. Appreciate you. I told Rick McKiddy, he asked me, every year I come down in May, we put flowers on the grave up here at the Highland Cemetery, and Rick asked me every year, or he makes a statement, Jim, he said, I just can't believe you're still doing this. 52 years. And you know how I look at it? What kind of a man would I be if someone saved my life and I walked away from it and never said thank you? I owe my life to what Gary McKiddy did that day. And I appreciate it. And I will, as long as I'm able to, show up here on May the 6th every year. I will come back and we will keep at this. I watched the closing scene of Saving Private Ryan, which is an extremely difficult movie to watch for anybody. The closing scene is an elderly Ryan is at the gravesite. You've probably all seen it. And he asked, his family is standing there with him. And he asked his family, have I lived a good life? Have I made it count? I have a wife and 5 children, 13 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, all because of what Gary McKiddy did on that day. My children would not be here. They would have never had an opportunity to be married and have children, my grandchildren. And then I even think about my nieces and nephews. And it goes on and on and on. I've also served as an associate pastor in Collinsville, Illinois. I've been to ministry school. I've served as a prison minister for many years. I now serve as a chaplain in a truck stop for truck drivers. Our truck drivers need your prayers, folks. It's a tough time for our country. I would like to think that when Gary McKiddy, when I see him again, I can stand and he'll say, thanks, Jim. You made your life count for something more than just yourself. And not only do I have to answer to him, I have to stand before God and give an account for my life. Isaiah chapter 2 verse 4 says something like this. It says, in that day they shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. I'm looking forward to that day, folks. God bless you all. Thank you for listening to me.
So when the family asked me before the ceremony if I'd say some words, I was like, I'd be honored. After that, I probably would have said no, or at least let me talk first. I was teary-eyed before when I met his daughter, and he was telling me how he had 5 kids and how they had kids, and they're 19 now descendants of this one man, because this great man, Sergeant McKiddy, sacrificed of himself to save him. And it looks like he was pretty darn close to saving another. So I think what I'll do, he mentioned, make it count. make your life worth it talking to the Boy Scouts back there. I think what I'll do is I'll talk about the 1st Cavalry Division and how how our soldiers can make it count, sacrifices that Sergeant McKiddy has made for our nation. In 1st Cavalry Division, we call ourselves the 1st Team. So when we salute, we say 1st Team, and the respondent salutes back and says, "Live the legend." So we've been in existence for 100 years. And the reason we're called the 1st Team is because we were first into Manila, first into Tokyo in World War II, first into Pyongyang in the Korean War, and then first into Cambodia, as many of our veterans here at this reunion know as well. There are 47 streamers on the 1st Cavalry Division colors. Streamers that represent soldiers like Sergeant McKiddy that over the last 100 years have fought for this country, bled for this country, and unfortunately died for this country. All these freedoms, the liberties that Americans enjoy today, is because of soldiers like Sergeant McKiddy. That's why we say, live the legend. It's our legacy of the 1st Cavalry Division. I was joking with some of the veterans last night, and I said the only difference between me and you is that I walk on the shoulders of giants, the accomplishments of giants, and I'm a lot younger. But I can't tell you what an honor it is, an absolute privilege it is, to fight for our Constitution and to do so along other 1st Teamers, other service members, soldiers that do the same. I can't think of a team I'm more proud to be a part of than America's 1st Team in our United States Army. And I'm a coach's son. I'm a Hall of Fame coach's son. And it made me think about something my dad said when my dad passed away as part of the eulogy that I delivered for him. But it made me think about it, sir, when you said, make it worth it. And I think about living the legend, what that means. Well, that's on me, right? That's on the close to 20,000 soldiers in the 1st Cavalry Division. So the message I'm going to give you, it's about opportunity. And I know it's probably getting a little hot out there, but you young kids out there, really anybody out there that's still got a breath in you, it's just something to consider. This great opportunity that 1st Cavalry Division soldiers have, that all you kids in the back have, is no different than the generations that came before us. It is an opportunity to make an imprint on the world, to change what is bad and to improve what is already good. All of us go through life sometimes and we think that our overall contributions to society are small and insignificant. But the quality of our contributions over time have an ever-increasing effect on the stature of our families, our communities, this nation. And when you wear the uniform of an American soldier, even the world. So each of us have choices to make each day. We can choose to pursue our goals so we can look back on them with pride, pursue our goals so we can make a positive contribution to the society, this world we live in, to go forth in this life and seize this great opportunity to wrestle with it to the best of our ability and to always seek to do our very best. Now, Teddy Roosevelt is timeless, but he had it right. In this world, in America, it's full of critics. The freedom and liberty that we fight for every day, it provides for it. But the critics play no games. They fight no fights. They make no mistakes because they attempt nothing. Down in the arena, that's where the doers are. So kids, all of you, stay in the arena and make sure others around you keep you there. Many of us here today will succeed during these very uncertain times that we face. Some will not, because they'll passively await success. So set your goals, grit your teeth, lay back your ears, and never give up. Never give up. Never, never, never give up. As long as you breathe air, you never give up. And the end result, your life will be fuller. It will be happier. It will be meaningful. I can't tell you how honored I am to even be standing beside this guy's name, Sergeant Gary McKiddy, and to know his legacy and how he contributes to this legend that we live. We're still, thank God, able to live. But I can tell you that I can feel my heartbeat in my stomach and pride in my chest. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, especially after this great man, in front of his great family. And I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, it continues to be a great honor for me to share the arena with all of you. First team, live the legend. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ron. Mayor Collins, who is not here now. General Carpenter. Thank you for allowing me to join you in this somber day, important day to dedicate to your brother, Gary. My name is Don Nguyen. I'm a physician practicing at Dayton Children's, and I'm formerly a refugee from Vietnam. I came here in 1975, so that was just a few years after the Cambodia offensive. I remember that day when the United States military forces decided to start a new offensive in Kampuchea, also known as Cambodia. For the longest of time, the Vietnam War was waged by the forces from the North Vietnamese that would come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail and then have sanctuaries in Cambodia. And then they will cross over and attack South Vietnam and then retreat back across the border. So the B-52 bombers were a tremendous weapon. They must have dropped thousands and thousands of pounds of bombs onto the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but it made so little effect. So it made sense that strategically, from a military point of view, you take it to where they are, to take the fight to where they are. It made sense to go into Cambodia and to root them out and to fight them. So I can remember it was a joint effort between the military, the US forces and the South Vietnamese military army. I remember that day vividly when President Nixon, at the advice of Henry Kissinger, made the decision to go in Cambodia in April of 1970. I remember vividly because one of my three military brothers was also deployed to the Cambodia offense. He was my second oldest brother, and he was a tank commander. So 6 degrees of separation meant that Sergeant Gary McKiddy was also in Cambodia in May of 1970, probably along with my brother. My brother was riding a tank. Gary was up there in the, did you call him the Huey or the Cobra? Was that a Huey? A Loesch, okay. But they were there together. And then we learned today of heroic acts by Gary McKiddy, a sacrifice of his own life to save another life. What triggered such an act of heroism at that particular second where his body summoned all of the adrenaline that he could get? to brave, like you said, Skaggs, the glowing flames and the flying bullets, like you and I ignore the rain that comes down in Dayton every once in a while. He ignored them and ran to get Mr. Skaggs to pull his brother of arms to safety. No one really can understand, but researchers have tried to find out what triggers, what makes individuals like Gary McKiddy live and breathe. Someone said once, true heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It's not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but it's the urge to serve others at whatever cost. And in Gary's case, even if that cost meant his own life. So when researchers looked at heroism and to try to find out what makes people tick, they all agree that there are about 8 crucial qualities that individuals like Gary possess, like bravery, moral integrity, conviction, altruism, honesty. And these qualities push them to commit acts of grand heroism with a capital H. And 2 factors are key to such acts. Number 1, the willingness for such risk-taking behavior. And number 2, a huge dose of generosity. I don't know Gary, I've never met Gary, but I bet you Gary has many of those qualities. So my brother survived the Cambodia offense, but it took many, many years later for my family, my mom and dad, to find out that he was killing in action, sitting on top of his tank when his tank was blown up, according to witnesses. And that was a very, very sad day for my mom and dad. But at least it created some closure. He had refused to leave his tank regiment, and that was during the last weeks or days of the war, because he refused to be a deserter. So 6 degrees of separation meant that 2 complete strangers meet on Facebook. And we both had a brother that was there in Cambodia in 1970 at the same time, whose lives were lost, both in the same war. And we both in Dayton, Ohio, and we are both standing here on the stage today. What Gary did, along with thousands of men and women during the Vietnam War, will not be forgotten by me, by my family, by tens of thousands of other Vietnamese refugees that made America their home. Even though the Vietnam War is taught sometimes in textbooks as a forgotten war. But by dedicating this road and name this road after Sergeant Gary McKiddy, perhaps Daytonians, Ohioans, travelers that drive through here will forever remember of such act of valor, of humanitarian significance, of bravery by a marvelous man, and be reminded of all of those who sacrificed in the Vietnam War. And perhaps when you all drive on that piece of road, you can rub off a little bit of those 8 qualities that Gary McKiddy championed and left in his legacy. So I thank you for inviting me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skaggs. It's truly a blessing to be here today as your state representative and to honor Sergeant Gary McKiddy. I also would like to say it's a blessing to be on the stage with the Zanowick family, another Gold Star family from Miamisburg as well. You know, when I was in my teens, the soldiers in the Vietnam War were looked upon with disdain. And now we praise them for what they did for our country with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The sign we have today is just not the naming of a road. It's a continuing of a story. We will continue to tell the story, and the story of Gary McKiddy has been told for 52 years. And bless you for doing that. As we sit here today and breathe in the air of freedom and liberty, I would challenge all of us, especially in this day and time, to remember the people who've influenced our lives, to continue to tell their story. Because if we do that, we will be a better people, a better country, and we will be blessed by the grace of God. Thank you very much for having me, and God bless America.
Good afternoon. I'm John Agenbro, Mayor of the City of Springboro. Also happen to be a Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart recipient. I didn't really know Sergeant McKiddy, Gary, but we both share the same Medal of Valor, the Purple Heart. And I know that he's looking down today saying, what's all this fuss about? Well, Gary, you're a big hero and always will be. For those of you who don't know, the Purple Heart, it was founded in 1782 by General George Washington. And later it was called the Badge of Merit. It later became the Purple Heart. And on the medal, you'll see George Washington's picture. It's the only medal that carries someone's picture on it. It's the medal that nobody wants because the initiation fee for it is so high. You must shed blood on foreign soil in enemy territory. And some never make it back. In Gary's case, I was fortunate enough to make it back. But it is the medal that nobody wants, but he is a hero. We're going to continue to fight to get him upgraded to that Medal of Honor because he deserved it, he earned it. We're going to keep fighting, Gary. Thank all of you for being here. God bless the McKiddy family. God bless the city of Miamisburg. God bless the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Thank you very much.
So they didn't save the best act for last, but I will be last. Thank you all for coming today and helping to to honor my brother Gary McKiddy, our brother. It's still hard to talk about 52 years later, and can't thank these guys enough. But I feel with the general and the troops behind me, our country's safe, and Putin, if they come after you, just surrender. Save yourself some trouble. Trust me. So, but I want to talk just a few minutes. I know it's getting late, but this all started after my brother was killed. There was a company commander by the name of Galen Rocher that was my brother and Jim's company commander that had contacted my parents and talked to my dad, and he did this quite frequently. And he had told Dad that Gary had been put in for the Medal of Honor, and that he had written the incident report because he was in charge of the blues that he sent in to retrieve the remains. And they found my brother, his remains, laying across the pilot with the transmission across her back. And he told us that Gary had been burnt beyond recognition, but his skeleton was still there, and that there was a bullet hole in one of his legs, and that Gary had been wounded, either going into the helicopter or when the enemy shot him from the hutch. And he said, you know, that General George Casey had died several weeks after my brother, and he was concerned about the paperwork being lost. So he encouraged Dad to follow up, and Dad was an old World War II veteran with the Big Red One, and he wasn't going to let go of it. He was proud of his son and wanted his legacy to live on forever. And so Dad started pushing the issue, and he first met a senator by the name of John Glenn. and he was telling John Glenn the story, and he said, I'm familiar with your son's actions. And he deserved the Medal of Honor. I just don't know a procedure to reopen a medal once one has been awarded. But let's find out. So John Glenn, in 1974, started the ball, and started ball rolling. And sure enough, he wrote letters after letters, and the Department of the Army said, sorry, there's no procedure to reopen the claim. So therefore, case dismissed. So I'll tell you this, from John Glenn until current, every United States Senator in the state of Ohio has put forth legislation to have Gary's case reopened and have him awarded the Medal of Honor. Every single one. And every United States congressman had put forth a similar competing bill up until this last Congress. So, I mean, we had at one point 56 congressmen and 26 United States senators introduce or co-sponsored legislation to support Gary McKiddy being upgraded. Two of them that you might have heard of. One guy was named Senator Joe Biden, and another one was Senator Mike DeWine. And now Mike DeWine is our governor, and Joe Biden, a few weeks ago on July 5th, or last week, had provided 4 soldiers, one posthumously, an upgrade from a Silver Star previous award to the Medal of Honor, because the case had been reopened and re-reviewed, and sure enough, those soldiers are awarded the medal that they deserved and they earned. So, Joe, if you're listening, Mr. President, you forgot one. So, what we have done, we have put together the postcards here, and we're asking all of you to do a little call of action. It's about a 30-second phone call. The phone number to the White House is on the back of it. I call them constantly, and I said the other day when they answered, they said, you should call your senator, your congressman. I said, been there, did that, and it didn't work. So Senator Biden, President Biden, is a man of faith, a man of empathy. Had his own son in Iraq, and there's concern that his cancer may have been caused by the burning pits, I think they called it, and don't know. But the point is, well, you love him or hate him, he's a good man with a good heart. And if this is brought to his attention again, I feel confident that he'll do the right thing. So, but with all that said, there's one piece I want to say this. Gary believed that everybody had the ability, maybe not to change the world, but to change the world for one person. And I looked at Jim and his kids, and I realized Gary's actions, which were above and beyond the call of duty, it changed the world for 19, 20 people. So, Jim, we appreciate you, your family, we love you. I don't know, other than asking all of you to take up the charge. Call the president, the White House. They probably won't let you talk to him, but they do, that's great. Tell him hello from the McKiddy family. And on the card, it's a very simple process. 30 seconds, you call and say, we want the president. It's time to award Sergeant Gary McKiddy the Medal of Honor. So, and by the way, I want to thank all of you, most of your family, most of your friends. My family's here. They told me not to introduce them, so I won't. But I will tell you, my son, as he's coming up, my son is a clinical psychotherapist. I don't like talking to him anymore because he analyzes me. But one of the things that he told me a few days ago, and it's resonated with me, is that if you put your hand on a fire, your mind tells you, pull away, because self-preservation is something that intrinsically we have. It's not something we sign up for. Our body, number one priority is self-preservation. And when you think about what Gary did, he ran into a burning helicopter and the ammunition is cooking off. So a gentleman named Walker Jones, he was a pilot. He met with us in 1999 at Fort Hood, Texas, when they were dedicating the barracks to my brother. And Walker was very emotional, and that may be him now. And Walker said, he tells mom and dad, your son didn't just run into a burning helicopter to save Jim, who was also on fire, or the pilot. He ran in to a situation where it looked like bottle rockets shooting off. And he said that's what they could see from above was fireworks coming out of that helicopter. And he said, but they weren't bottle rockets, they were live ammo. And he said, if you want to know what that's like, go home and put a box of bottle rockets on a fire, and as they start shooting off, run into it. And remember, that was live ammo. And Walker Jones said Gary McKiddy deserves a Medal of Honor, and they're going to push for it. So many members of the 1st Air Cav have written letters to the Congress, the Senate, the President of the United States, including Galen Rocher as company commander. And we're going to continue that fight until he receives the recognition he deserves. So with that, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Stand here. I never spoken.
Okay.
We're members of the Patriot Guard of Ohio, and we're here to honor Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy, a great soldier, one of our brothers. A lot of you may not realize it, but we have about 330 million people in the United States. Less than 1% of them served in our armed forces. Gary is one of those 1%. He has allowed us to honor our flag, stand here and assemble. He's allowed us to have children and send them to the schools or let them work in the way they want to, what occupation they want. So, Gary, you're a great man. I got one more thing to say. We recently lost a hero. His name was Woody Wilson, Medal of Honor recipient. The Patriot Guard took us, allowed us to take him around to various schools in the area, and he went to grade school. Really good speaker. One of the things he said to the children was, "What is the best birthday present you've ever received?" And he stood there a minute and left them think for a minute. And he said, "My best present for my birthday was when I was born in the United States." So he was a great man, and Gary is one like him. And we all consider him our brother. With that, we're going to, the Patriot Guard is going to give a plaque to the family to show our respect for you. And it says, on behalf of a grateful America and the Patriot Guard Riders, please accept our sincere condolences on your tragic loss. May your pain be tempered by the knowledge that Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy, United States Army, killed in action May 6, 1970, is a true American hero.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hold that up. If you get it. What an honor. And we'll definitely display that and put it all over social media. But last piece on the card, you don't have to call the president's office if you don't like doing that. You can email them, you can text them, you can send them letters, which is something I don't know anybody does anymore. But anyway, with that, we're going to dismiss the group.
Let's dismiss the building.
Go ahead. Again, please. Go ahead. Again, thank you all for coming, and I was derelict in my responsibilities. Tom Young, known him since I was a puppy and had hair, Ron and I, and this would not have happened without him and Niraj and Tani and the mayor. But Tom, it had been put in an omnibus budget, and for 52 years we had saw what would happen when these legislation would be put into a group of other legislation. They just never came out. And Tom reached in and somehow through his tenacity was able to pull that out and get it voted on as a separate bill. And that's why we're here today. And I just want to thank him from the bottom of the McKiddy family heart. So Tom, thank you so much. And again, we'll see you all at the cemetery.
Today marks the continuing story of Sergeant Gary Lee McKiddy, and it's been an honor. It's a great memorial today, and I should also just say maybe it wasn't a memorial. Maybe it was a new day, a new time, a new voice for him through us, and it's truly been an honor. You want to be able to put the naming of a road or a bridge somewhere where people can see it, where it has impact. And when the city worked with the Ohio Department of Transportation, this was the selection process. 1, 2, 3.
Hallelujah.
Thank you. Very cool. Thank you. Sit up.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Stand and face this way.
That's good. That's good.
We're going to honor our comrade with a rifle salute and a flag and pass. Detail, attention. Port arms. Half left face. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Half right face. Present arms. Order on.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this day on this occasion to honor a fallen hero and my best friend. I thank you, O God, for his life, short but powerful. Thank you, O God, for your mercies and your grace. Thank you for this great land that I live in, that I've had the privilege of serving this nation and all these veterans here, Father. We know what the cost is. We understand that. Father, we do thank you for your grace and mercy as you watch over us and keep us, and you kept us during difficult times, and you continue to do so. I'm reminded that the Good Shepherd leaves the 99 and goes after the one, and you are that Good Shepherd. And I thank you, O God, that you are forever faithful, and I know, Lord, that one day we'll all have to stand before your throne and give an account. I pray for these that are here, and I pray, oh God, for America, for these United States that we love and cherish so much, and so much has been paid for, Father. That your grace would be sufficient, oh God, Lord, and that your spirit and your presence and power would come and heal our land. We thank you, oh God, for this time, this celebration together. I ask your blessing, grace, mercy, and protection over each one. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.